Come to order, please. Welcome, everyone, to the August 2nd regular City Council meeting of the City of Bel Air Beach. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Frank Baker. Here. Councilmember Glenn Dunn.
Here.
Councilmember Leslie Otero. Here. Councilmember Rita Swope. Here. Vice Mayor Dave Gaddis.
Here.
Mayor Joseph Manzo.
Here.
City Manager Lynn Reeves.
Here.
City Attorney Fred Riley.
Here.
And Councilmember Robin Aki was unable to attend.
Okay, thank you. First item of business is approval of the agenda. Motion, please.
So moved.
Motion by Gaddis, second.
Second.
Rita Swope. Any discussion? Any comments from the city? Back to council. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 6-0. Agenda is approved. Next comes to citizen comments. We have a 3-minute presentation by any citizen that would like to address us. The procedure for this is as follows. 1 second. You come up to the podium here. Please give your name and residency. I will tell you that there should be out there and on that presentation table a rule of conduct. That is the rules that we operate by. You speak respectfully to the council, and we will speak respectfully with you. That's the basic gist of 12 rules there. You have 3 minutes of time unless someone gives you extra time. You cannot speak on any item that's on the agenda during this portion. If there's something you wish to speak of that's on the agenda, I will call for citizen comments at that time, and you can come up and speak at that point, okay? So if it's on the agenda, you'll talk later about it. If it's not on the agenda, now is the time to speak to the council. Finally, the last thing is don't expect council to get in a discussion with you. We're not permitted under the rules to speak back and forth with you, so the most we're going to say to you is thank you. I do have the option of referring something of concern to the city manager or to the city attorney. With that said, would anyone like to speak with council? Yes, sir. Yes, speak right into the mic, about 2 inches away, you'll be fine.
Joshua Hollis, 7th Street. I'm going to be talking about the federal lawsuit, so if anyone wants to recuse themselves, I'll leave.
Okay.
About a year ago, a council member, Rita Swope, put forth a motion to remove June Van Scoy from the Parks and Rec Board. It didn't have anything to do with her job performance. It was in part due to what she said at the Bel Air Shores Council meeting. Twice this council was warned by the mayor that this was in violation of her First Amendment rights. The city attorney also warned not to remove her. 3 of the council members who voted to pass this motion are still active, which is Glenn Gunn, Rita Swope, Dave Gaddis. They ignored this legal advice due to them proving that they're not capable of putting the city's best interest ahead of their own personal agendas and personal vendettas, even to the extent of getting the city involved in a 6-figure lawsuit. I call that they do the right thing and they stand down and resign from their position and not cause any more liability to the city. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for your comment.
Yes.
Good evening. My name is Jolie Rodero, and I live on 113 12th Street. I also have, in case I run over, 3 minutes from my husband Pete and from Linda
Would
Welch.
you hang on 1 second, please, on that? Can I show just the hands, please? Is that correct? You're giving your 3 minutes?
That's right.
And yes, Ms. Welsh? Yes? Patty, 9 minutes for Ms. Rodero. Ms. Rodero, you have the floor.
I begin with, I agree and support Josh Hollis's statement that due to this, some members of this council's misbehavior, the city is now facing a large federal discrimination suit, and of which most likely the Bel Air Beach legal has to pay for their defense. I would ask that they all resign as well. What I'm really going to talk about is a sign that's being planned for outside, and I'm assuming that perhaps, maybe I'm assuming incorrectly, that you've already had permitting requests done or any kind of studies done, because if it hasn't occurred yet, you will need them. Not only the permitting, but you will need environmental studies, and you will need traffic impact studies, because we've contacted the DOT, and those are going to be mandatory. I would like it that if you have any studies with reference to that sign, that I can have a copy of it. Bel Air Beach belongs to the Florida Coastal Island Sanctuaries Program that works to protect threatened and endangered coastal birds. Two particular birds, the little blue heron and the tricolored heron, they nest right out there on Bird Island, right outside of our city hall. And they're threatened and endangered. It is part of this Florida Coastal Program to protect these endangered birds. The retention pond across the street is also home to local and endangered migratory birds, and it's also our responsibility to protect them. We're constantly being told to shut off bright lights to save the sea turtles, yet bright lights affect all wildlife. They affect their flighting habits, their breeding habits. Bel Air Beach City Hall is already lit up like the Taj Mahal every single night. And now we will have a colored, blinking, or rotating bright electric sign in front. What is the impact of this sign on traffic? Slowing, stopping to read the sign. We already have backups on up and down the causeway. What is the impact on the homeowners that face the causeway? What is, most importantly, our coastal and endangered birds? How is that damage measured? And what is Bel Air Beach City going to do about that? I'd like to know if, in the course of the evening, if you have charged a committee to study these topics and the environmental impact on the sign, and when they meet, so that I can follow up on that. I think the true measure of this sign is a potential revenue that the city could see by renting out space on its advertising sign. And I would request, again, I request copies of all the studies. Since I don't know how the city is going to conduct this business, I would like to make some suggestions in the event that it continues to go on and go through the sign. One, that the sign be turned off at night, every night, like the closing of the beach gates. That the colors, the brightness, the solid versus blinking of the sign be selected to cause the least harm to the birds. What is the increased cost of operating this sign? Is this in the budget? Has it been accounted for? How about the longevity of the sign? Usually it's about 8 years. And how will it be disposed? Adding to landfill? And is there, again, I already asked if there's a sign committee charged with the completion of these studies, and if so, I'd like to know the members and when they meet. Thank you.
Thank you. Before you step away, you made several requests. Are those to be considered public records requests?
Yes, they exist.
Okay, then, 1 second. So, I'm sure Patty wasn't taking notes of this, but she can review the tape or the video at a later
I can send
point.
her an email.
That's fine. I appreciate that.
Thank you for your comments.
Yeah, we're not supposed to interact, okay?
I'd like to respond to it.
We'll need permission. We're not supposed to interact with the residents, okay? So if you're going to dispense with the rules, then we should have done that in the beginning. But if you want to make a motion to dispense with the rules, we'll dispense with the rules.
Yes, I'd like to motion that I respond to that last citizen's comment like we normally do at every other previous meeting. We seem to be tightening up the rules just for this one occasion, and I'd like to just kind of relax so I can make a comment and
I'll
address
second
the
that.
questions she has.
I'll second that.
Second debate? I'll debate it. We don't tighten up or loosen the rules at all for one person. The rules are the rules. The ordinance says you don't interact with residents. So if you want, and we have at times had an interaction with residents. So if that's what the council votes for, then we'll have the interaction with the residents. It's not my job to make the rules on the fly.
Then I respectfully request we call the questions.
You know, if you wanted to be mayor, you should have ran for it. I won, I'm the mayor. You don't know your procedure. What happens after you get done talking? What's the next spot? Does anybody know?
I think debate.
Debate. And then after debate, what happens? Anybody? Just jump right in.
Citizen comments?
Citizen comments, correctamundo. And if I don't let the citizens speak, what am I violating? The open public meeting rules. So we don't call the question yet, but thank
Why don't we
you.
just spare the commentary, move on with the protocol?
Well, you wanted to call the question. You've tried that before, it didn't work in the past, it's not gonna work with me ever.
I accept your friendly reminder.
No problem. Any other council comments?
Well, yes, I'd like to make a comment. It seems that we just randomly bend the rules whenever we feel like it. I think basically you pick your favorites, and those are the ones that we comment back and forth with. Everybody else that you don't agree with, they're ignored and chastised. So I think if Mr. Gunn would like to respond, I'm all in for it.
And the personal attack rule that you just did, saying I pick and choose favorites, would that be like you? When you pick and choose your motion favorite? Right back at you, my friend. Okay? I don't pick favorites. The rule says you don't act like a child. Did you get that from your friend? The rule says we don't have an interaction. Every time we've had an interaction, the council voted to have that interaction. Unless you change the ordinance, which you don't have time to do because you're sticking your nose in my lawsuit, you wind up having the rule we have. With that said, any further council comments?
Everyone heard that, his lawsuit.
Oh yeah, it took you a city council resolution to figure it out.
I
My
just-
lawsuit, Manzo v. Beller, Short David, Michael Gaddis.
I would just like to, if we're going to suspend the rules, we suspend it for all.
We will. It's for this segment.
And I understand the rules and that, and I pity these poor people that sit here till 11 o'clock at night that want to go home, and they make comments. I would love to entertain your thoughts and wishes and desires. You're the people that run the city, or, your tax money. So I understand, and I support you.
Okay, thank you. Any citizen comments? The child is welcome to comment too. No? Just on this motion to open it up for back and forth. Okay, back to council?
I have one more, which is, I know that everyone feels like I'm trying to stifle them. But the truth is that our mayor, which I'm not allowed to address, actually moved citizen comments to the end of the night. I'm the one who got them back for you. If it wasn't for me, you'd all be here at 11 o'clock. So I hope you remember that.
Yes, and that stroke of brilliance by David, who was a council member at the time. The reason why I moved him to the end of the night, Mr. Gunn, if you're going to keep playing with your fingers, go outside and play with yourself and come back when you're done. Okay, Mr. Gaddis, it was at the end of the night so that we would have an interaction, which would have been our immediate point thereafter. You moved it to the beginning, and our part doesn't come until, item 17. We're on item 2. So we're the ones who got penalized by your brilliance. I'll call the question. All in favor of having a dialogue back and forth with each person who comes up on citizen comments this evening? Aye?
Aye.
Unopposed? Mr. Gunn, you may address. Ms. Rodero, you are up here right now, and you have plenty of time left. So, Mr. Gunn will now address your comments.
Thank you. I just want to address some of the issues you raised about the digital sign, because I think there's a concern that the city is just leaping into this thing blindly. We're going to put a digital or electronic sign out there, okay? So the city manager and his staff is diligently working on some implementation and ordinance guidelines for further down the road when other people may come forward and say, hey, I want a digital sign. So with respect to the background, the city of Bel Air Beach has begun the acquisition process to replace an older monument sign, okay? The new sign will incorporate electronic panels that provide an efficient and effective means of displaying timely public notifications. The displays are highly customizable with respect to color, font size, brightness, screen transition and animation, and the message dwell time, which is how long the message stays on the screen, okay? In order to balance the public service provided by an electronic display with traffic safety, as well as the residential community ambiance or flavor of Bel Air Beach, the following guidelines are being distilled and looked at, okay? Because we've done some research, and there are gold standards for how progressive communities implement electronic signs, okay? It's not new technology, and there's a lot of guidance out there of how people have done it successfully, as well as how people have done it improperly, just have created new problems, okay? So with those thoughts in mind, further down the road, I anticipate that the city will be talking and working with our planning and zoning committee for future requests for digital signs and considerations dealing with some of these electronic signs within the city of Bel Air Beach. The areas of emphasis with respect to electronic signs include some of the following. Okay? I know in the future there was a concern about, oh well, anybody can just put a digital sign now wherever they want. Well, the gold standard is you tie the placement of digital signs basically to the volume of traffic on roadways. So if you put some constraints around the volume of traffic on roadways, obviously you don't have the traffic volume on a residential street, so that might prohibit you from placing an electronic sign advertising that your house is for sale or you're having a garage sale this weekend or something along those lines, okay? There is also some considerations for whether the electronic sign is placed on the person's premise or the business premise or off the premise. So again, these are a lot of things that we're looking at and trying to understand and be smart about with the implementation of this thing. There are guidelines for the setback, how far back from the street you have to place this sign, and there are also traffic safety impacts, okay? There are concerns about the hours of operation. And one of the factors, like you said, is there are energy consumption costs to this thing. And typically those are a little more expensive than a residential home. It can be up to 30 times depending on how bright it is or how many hours of operation you have. But so we're being respectful and trying to understand that and understand that this thing may not need to be on 24 hours a day. Okay? There are also concerns about brightness. In daylight, the gold standard is less than 5,000 nits, which is a unit of brightness for these signs. If you drive around and look at some of the signs that are out there on commercial properties, they are very offensive, and never at any time was the goal or the anticipated need meant to be a bright fireworks display sign. Okay? At other times, other than daytime, the gold standard is less than 250 nits. So you can see that it changes greatly from day to night. And of course, there's an auto adjust function that's basically tied to the ambient lighting. So on a cloudy day, it's certainly not going to be as bright as if the sun is out full and bright. The size will be a function of zoning or adjacent structures, and that's tied to the planning and zoning and any possible groundwork that we lay for future zoning restrictions on this thing. There are concerns and gold standards about minimum message duration, which is this dwell time I'm talking about. How long should that message be on display on the screen? The issue there is if you have too short a dwell time, like 3 to 5 seconds, you're creating a distraction to drivers. So what you do is you set a minimum dwell time of like 11 seconds, which is the standard for a 35 mile per hour roadway, and a view when you come into view at 500 feet. So I mean, this stuff isn't just made up. There are standards for some of this stuff, and we are looking very seriously at this stuff. We are not just going to jump into this thing blindly. Okay. And of course, the last thing is maximum transition time. And you don't want this thing too slow, or otherwise people will be looking at the sign waiting for it to change over, and you don't want to have sequential messages. You don't want to have screen A tied to screen B, because then that's a distraction as well. So you limit sequential messages, and you maximize the amount of time that the screen changes display, okay? So I think what I'm just trying to say here is that we're doing some homework on this thing, and we're putting some critical thought to this thing. We're not just shotgunning the approach to this thing. The display has to have a default setting, so if there is a problem with the display or a power outage or some problem with the display, it shuts off, basically. So you don't have a funny message on the sign, blanking, flashing and distracting drivers. no interactive displays with pedestrians or cars. Some of these other municipalities are getting so advanced with this stuff, as your car drives by, the digital sign interacts with your telephone or your car to say, hey, hey, why don't you stop in and we'll give you a free stay at the hotel if you come in and register. Any questions on any of those things?
Mr. Gunn, but I beg to differ. You didn't address any of my comments, which were particularly about environmental studies. Now I'm speaking about environmental studies being done to impact birds, or the traffic study. You haven't done, from what I've heard from you, any kind of official study. You're just following guidelines that are published out there, which is great, but I don't trust the council, since the idea of this sign to begin with was in opposition of all the residents that responded to your survey twice, that they didn't want this sign, yet you went ahead shotgunning, as you said, the sign ahead. So since it's coming, whether we like it or not, and it's being rammed down our throats, I want to make sure that you do follow all the guidelines, that there is an environmental study, not just you reading your guidelines, just you designing what so-and-so is doing down the street, but that the governmental agencies say this will not damage these birds, these will not impact our traffic. We know the traffic here is horrific on the weekends and we don't want any more distractions. So all you told me was how the sign works, and frankly, I don't care how the sign works, because I don't want the sign, period. I think it is a crass distraction to their city. We don't need that sign. I think I heard a gentleman in your last council meeting, and I think he's the gentleman that maybe the company that's going to do the sign, from the way he was speaking. And I think the primary reason is the revenues that advertising on that sign are going to be able to bring. Well, at least it will offset the high cost of running the sign. So I thank you for your comments. I don't like your comments on the council. I think you all sound like high schoolers or middle schoolers bickering back and forth. Protocol is protocol. And you need to follow the rules. That's how we are all civil. I follow the rules. I don't speak longer than I have to, right? Thank you.
Thank you for being honest with us.
Mr. Darrow, hang on, Mr. Darrow? Mr. Darrow?
Yes.
I wanted to address your comments. I have a right to speak here too, at least on this issue. You said it exactly what I was thinking. I don't care how many pixels, nips, and whatever the hell the sign runs with. I care about what you just brought up, which I was unaware of, environmental studies and traffic studies, that I have not heard one word about in any of the planning of this. And why would that be any different? I'm going to show later on this letter that I demanded from the Florida DEP. You might remember that our beautiful COs were clear cut to the ground in November by our city manager, and he didn't know any better. Despite the fact that there was a sign not more than 20 foot away from the 6th Street dunes. That sign's been removed. I still have a picture of it. We like to say we didn't know any better. No one told us that was wrong. I didn't know I couldn't run that red light. Well, DEP does have rules, and if you're aware of them, then I'm going to refer this to our city attorney and to our city manager for follow-up. We have a citizen that has said that there's rules. I'm aware of no studies that have been done whatsoever. So I'd like to know if there have been studies, and if they've been I'm not done. If there's studies, if they've been done, and what the results of those studies are, so that we don't get any more DEP letters telling us we broke more rules and more laws. That also goes for the Department of Traffic, and if there's a highway study that needs to be done. I believe that's the county, a county road out there, so I guess it's the county, I don't know. You've done more research. City manager.
Well, we haven't done any studies, and I think she's erring on the wrong side personally. There's a lot of things you do studies for. There was a sign out there that put out more lumens than this thing does, and now you're telling me that this sign's bad for the birds, yet we had a sign out there that put out more light than this sign. So I will look into it, just to clarify, and I'll get you an answer, and I'll get the council an answer.
And I will bring up the studies and the conversations with DOT, and I will send it to you so that you know
That's
the people
fine.
we spoke to.
I don't think DOT has anything to do with this
Traffic,
road.
yes, they do.
I have one comment also. I have seen online and heard it from neighbors that we intend on advertising on this sign. I know everyone on the council, and
Yes.
we've met, and we have not one time discussed ever advertising. Just because the salesman brings up that you can do it with this sign does not mean we're going to do it. He could very well say we could throw it in the water. We're not going to do it. So I appreciate your honesty, and if you're going to post things online, you might as well clarify and say, this is my opinion, that they're going to advertise, instead of they're probably going to advertise.
That is my opinion, and I can post it any way I like. And in your council meeting this month, the salesman or the gentleman actually said it because there was, how would I say, reluctance, a little reluctance from the council, and he says, oh, and by the way, you can do this and get revenue. Now, based on the way this council has performed, I don't put anything past it. So if there's a way to make money in that sign, I'm sure you will find it, and we'll vote for it down the road.
Just,
Sorry,
I
I'm going to
don't-
get off your fast.
I appreciate you bringing up the wildlife issues and everything like that, and I'm all for wildlife, but you just go right down the street here, at 9th Street. For years, there's been sea ducks that harbor on that beach, okay? Migrate out of the, once was a protected beach that no boats would come in, or have to come in out of speed. Now you have the ski-doos, sea-doos, whatever you want, motorized crafts. I think they think they're bowling pins, some of these kids try to,
That's right.
you have the electric bikes that clear the path. They almost hit me. I mean, I'm a bigger target, of course, but, and you know what? I contacted the FWC, and I don't want to show what finger they gave me here. They more or less did. And I got a reply back tonight about the buoys, okay? And I've been asking for a meeting with the mayor about our shores and everything like that. So the attorney from the FWC contacted me tonight at 5:30 or 5:15, whatever, and said, you can file for a variance, but it has to be under this statute. Please click the link. Click the link, it says statute not available. Government at its best, is what I'm saying.
Yes.
But you make some valid concerns.
No, and I think it's just a matter of continuing to push, because I agree with you with reference to the beach in the sense of the buoys are missing and the boats coming close to
Well,
us.
and the mayor brings up that DEP letter, and I responded to everyone on that letter, Mr. Mayor, last week, and crickets came back. They're more concerned about a mowing, I call it a mowing mishap. That people getting skin cancer on the beach, ducks being killed, manatees no longer being protected in that certain area they used to always swim in May, okay? Migrate up, migrate down. That's okay.
It's just about being vocal and nonstop.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Folks, I want to just give you one, oh, sorry, I'll give you in 1 second. If somebody says something you agree with or you don't agree with, our rules call that the audience has to stay quiet. So I hear applause, but we don't want to have applause and booing and stuff like that. The rule is we're supposed to just basically sit there as the audience, so please let's follow that one. Sir?
Okay, my name is Fuad Turkidi and I live on the Bay Shore, 27th, right around Morgan. I'm out here just to support the lady that was here earlier, and I'm 110% with her as far as the having a street light. And I don't know you all by name, but the gentleman over here who gave us a wonderful description of what this sign, on all the statistics of what this sign is about. But yet you use the terminology of destructive, keeping it away from being destructive many, many times. That only tells me that this sign will be destructive. And you were basically trying to fine-tune how to make that less destructive. It's, to me, clear understanding that sign will be destructive for the drivers. So And I'm also supporting work from an environmental standpoint. So that's why I'm here.
Thank you. Any other citizens like to announce? Mr. Hansick?
John Hansick, 22nd Street. I have thought seriously about whether or not to come up here tonight because I didn't know if I could contain myself. I'm really livid with what's going on. The lawsuit, the sign. I don't think that we've done right. And I'm not going to use council members' names in general or directly. And someone at the last council meeting or the one before, because I was out of town for the special meeting and the work session. But I like the waive. I want it. Just cost the taxpayers $5,000 more because that was personal. It wasn't in the best interest of the city, and yet 2 surveys were conducted. 70% of the people said they didn't want it. You didn't listen to we, the people. That's who you represent. That's who you serve. Second item that really upset me. I didn't make that last meeting because I was preparing to go on vacation. I find out somebody on council decided they wanted to look into a new city attorney, or for whatever reason, review the contract. I don't know what was said, how it was said, tone, or whatever. I intend to listen to the voice, the tape of that meeting. I'm shocked. I have great deal of respect for Mr. Riley. I have said so on multiple occasions. He's given this council wise counsel and tried to keep you all out of trouble. And now he has given his notice, and yet you've been served with a federal lawsuit. I don't know of a lawyer who would want to touch it with a 20-foot pole. And in conclusion, I concur with the other residents who have also said the same thing. Those of you named in that suit, you need to step down. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick.
I did not mention anybody by name.
I said thank you.
Am I dismissed, Mayor?
What's,
I was just
Mr.
wondering,
Bankroft wants to comment.
Yes, sir.
well, the sign, there was a long debate about it, it got passed, I made comments, and I was getting responses 4-1 against it. I agree with you, I believe the residents did not want it. I would like to knock on everybody's door in this township, like I did when I was campaigning, and say, give me $40 for the sign, because that's what it would cost. Right? I don't think anyone would have showed, well, I shouldn't say anyone. The majority of the residents would never show that money. And for clarification, I was not at the last meeting. There was a vote taken, but I expressed wholeheartedly I could not hear or no. And there was no way, Mr. Riley, that I was voting to have you replaced. I thought it was for other litigation that was coming forward that they were seeking to entertain. I think you've done a marvelous job. I got your bills right here for the last 3 months. There's not one line item on here that's not reasonable, and anybody who works for a living wouldn't pay, all right? I think Mr. Riley does a marvelous job for us. He tells me everything I don't want to hear, but that's his job, all right? All right, I mean, and then you go forward. And we got a resignation letter from you today, or a couple of weeks ago. I hope you do not resign from us, especially in the budget atmosphere that we're in. That's all.
Mr. Mr. Hanzig, I'm going to respond with you
Yes, sir.
to your 3 points, okay? First off, with regards to the sign, it's been voted on, unfortunately. There are some issues, and there might be a possibility if there's some technical issue, it might be stopped, but it's going to go forward, okay? And I didn't vote for it, and Frank Banker didn't vote for it, and Rob Naki didn't vote for it. You just remember that.
I know who did and didn't.
And that's okay, we can use names. This is a vote, you own your vote, I've said that before, you own it if you make it. That's the first thing. I was gonna wait till later on, but since you brought the topic up with Fred Riley, that was at the work session last time, that's why you missed it. It wasn't at the regular council meeting, and it's available on tape, you can hear it. The person who made that was the same person who was, after 22 years of Paul Marino, said we were moving too fast to put his contract out for bid. It had never been bid once in 22 years. But this had been not even 22 months, and there was this great urgent need, in that person's opinion, to bid this contract. They were ready to authorize the city manager that night to go out to bid, and I said he couldn't do that, he had to bring it to this meeting. Mr. Riley listened to the tape. He and I spoke afterwards, after he listened to that tape. He told me what was going to happen, and I was just blown away. I was blown away that we lost a fine attorney, an excellent attorney. There was a comment made last time that, well, we'll bid it out, and if Fred Riley's the best we can do, well, then we'll keep him. You'll never do better than Fred Riley, never. This man has given this city umpteen free hours. See how many attorneys give free hours. See if any of the attorneys that will bid on this job, if any attorneys bid on this job, give you free hours. He's also given expert legal advice, and I know I'm an attorney, I can speak from authority. Yes, he's told people some things they don't want to hear, and then don't follow it sometimes, because they know more. Fred Riley did an excellent job. Not only did he do an excellent job, he did an excellent job about diffusing some very difficult situations, not just here, but on the outside. What comes to mind was our city manager ripping out campaign signs last year, and a citizen, I believe his name was Mr. Alfondulos, came to our council meeting. This man happened to be a partner in a major law firm that specialized in constitutional law, and he said, "I'm not going to sue your city," but basically I could have. Fred Riley worked with him to diffuse the situation and make sure it never got into another 1983 lawsuit. You can thank Fred Riley for that. He did that all himself. And there's been other times when he's intervened and stopped really, potentially dangerous situations, legal dangerous situations, from becoming dangerous situations. He's a fine attorney. He's an honest attorney. He's a good man. And I'm going to miss you. It's a loss, a great loss to our city. A great loss. And this mayor will always support you, and I'll support you if I'm not the mayor, and I will defend you against anybody who wants to give some revisionist history. I was here and I know what you said and I know what you did. You're an excellent attorney in my book. So I share your sentiments, Mr. Hanzig. Mr. Gunn.
With respect to the sign that the council voted to require, that was the original sign design that was brought to this council when we initially went out to look for an electronic sign. And that design was unanimously considered appropriate at the time, and the design that we wanted with the width. Okay. At that time, the council, when they found out the sign was in excess of $50,000, the council said, no, we think we can do better than that. And we sent the contractor back to the drawing board, and they came back with a sign that was $20,000 cheaper. So without belaboring, going through any additional cycles on this thing, we voted for the original design at a much reduced cost. So, I recognize that no amount of discourse will change anyone's opinion in here, but that was a sign that was unanimously voted for, except for the price, originally by the council. I respect your First Amendment rights, as does everybody on this council, and thank you very much for bringing those before us. Thank you.
Leslie?
I want to agree with what Dave said and what the mayor said. I was very upset to get the resignation notice. He's done a wonderful job for us, been very understanding through some difficult times, and I don't want him to go. Could you rescind your resignation?
Yeah, I'll second that. Anybody else?
No,
Will you,
I can count, so, you know, out of 7, I can count 4, and I appreciate the comments everyone's made, but I don't see a compelling reason for me to do that. Unless y'all have something else you want to tell me.
Mr. Riley, I think if the council's at full session here with all our members, I think you would get 4 votes. I think you would get 4 votes if Rob Anaki was here.
Well, I'm going to be, continue to be hopefully a consummate professional. I came into this job, it has been very difficult because as I've said before, the council has very different viewpoints, and there's been conflict during the time that I've been here. And I've done my very best to bridge the conflict. The way I took the vote that you had at a meeting where I wasn't in attendance was basically a vote of no confidence. And that's fine. You can have a vote of no confidence, but if that's what I'm faced with, I can count, and I really don't have any grand desire to go through the procedure of going through an RFP for a position that I currently have. I would hope that each one of the 7 of you would recognize that I have done a good job under difficult circumstances. But having said all that, if y'all decide it's time to make a change, that's fine. There's not going to be hard feelings from me. I am a professional. I've been a lawyer for almost 35 years, and this isn't the first time that I and a client saw things differently and we parted ways. And as a professional, I will part ways, and I will wish you the best, and I hope you'll do the same for me. So that's a roundabout answer to your question, but it has been, the thing that deters me from reconsidering anything is the level of conflict on the council, and I don't know that I can fix that. I can't. I haven't been able to fix it in 2 years. So if y'all decided it was time to make a change, I respect your decision, and I will graciously step aside.
Mr. Riley, I have a proposal for you. It's always nice making a proposal in front of 50 people. Item 8 on the agenda tonight is for the council to authorize the city manager to bid for services for an attorney. Now, if your resignation stays, we have no choice but to approve that. Even I would have to vote for that one because our city must have a city attorney. However, we're going to open that up for discussion. And I just heard Leslie Notaro say something, and Leslie was one of the people that supported bringing this up to originally bringing this to this discussion. But now it seems like there's been a change of opinion. I can count too. What I'm gleaning is if Leslie Notaro is on our side here, we have Leslie, we have me, I think Frank Bankard, and we have, I know Robin Aki when she gets back, because she voted against doing it along with me. So you may have your 4 votes. And I don't want this to be something, I'm never going to hold you to something that you don't want to do. Our city right now needs a competent, excellent attorney more than ever. We need someone to, and you can see what's going on in the council. I can't help you. I'll do my best to try and help you make the council work together. It's going to be a little bit of an effort, I think, given the situation, but we'll try. I'll commit to you that I'll do my best, for what that's worth. It'll take 6 other people to do that. But I'm going to ask you to reconsider. you don't have to make a decision right this moment, but item 8 is coming up. And at that point, I'm going to ask you to, what you might want to do. I can call a special council meeting, and we wouldn't lose any ground. Again, I can't let the city have no attorney, so you're going to have to vote for that. But I'd be voting because you're not in the position, not because I want you out of the position. That's a big difference. And I think Leslie's also the other attorney up here. We have 2 real attorneys on this council, and she recognizes how good you are. You all do.
Well, I'll make one more comment, and that is the unfortunate thing that this board and every other board in Florida has is you can't discuss things unless you're in a public meeting to discuss them. So I fully understand why that makes things complex. I fully understand, that there may be a difference of opinion, and that's fine. I again stress, I respect the fact that there are differences of opinion, and I will ponder it until item 8 comes up. So that, I guess, is my answer for now.
Mr. Riley, the baby's crying. The baby wants you here too. Anyone else on council? We have Mr. Hansick sitting here. You sure do. I think you do. Go ahead.
First off, all right, Mr. Gunn, thank you for your comment. I appreciate that about my First Amendment rights. I'm going to take it seriously. And I guess in conjunction with what just transpired here, I followed the strategic plan being built and everything, and how that was supposed to be the cornerstone, your roadmap, if you will, council, how to conduct business for the city. If I may, because I've seen it different times in the course of time, where personal opinion gets in the way of city business and it clouds judgment. That's not what you're up there for. I have been in elected office, not public office, but I've been in elected office. And one of the things that I was always told, don't think about what's good for the short term, what's good for the organization, what's best for the organization. In this case, the organization is the city of Bel Air Beach, its citizens. That's who y'all serve. Listen to the citizens, weigh their input. And again, 70% of the people, I understand, sign's a dead issue. But it's like you thumbs your nose at us. What's in the best interest of the city going forward? That's all I ask as a taxpayer and a citizen, and I'm sure these folks out here, that's all they ask. Put the partisanship aside. It's we the people. Thank you.
Well said.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick. Do any other citizens like to address the council? Yes, sir.
My name is Barry Gray, 112th Street. One question, just two. First, who's going to be the arbiter of the truth that's going to go on the sign? And two, do you have a public information officer?
I'm sorry, I could barely hear your comments, Mr. Gray. You got to talk right into that, Mike. We
All right,
spent thousands of dollars,
first
but we don't have a
comment
new
is-
PA system.
I'm sorry, who is going to be the arbiter of the truth that's going to go on the sign? Who's going to decide what your message is? And do you have a public information officer?
There is no public information officer, and the sign is controlled by our city manager. Any other citizens like to address council? Seeing no other hands, I'll close citizen comments and move to the presentation by the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office. I see two sheriff's officers. Will one of you be making the presentation tonight?
Good evening, council. In regards to any new items to discuss regarding crime in the city, there's nothing new or anything to pass on. Everything is a beautiful city to live in from a crime perspective.
Good clarification. Go ahead.
Any questions, concerns, comments?
Sheriff, I love it when you bring me a bunch of zeros. Zero crime, zero nothing. I mean, we had nothing again. This is, I think, 2 months in a row. Kudos to the men and women on the department. Excellent job as always. Excellent job to our citizens who are out there paying attention to what's going on in their neighborhoods, because they don't do it alone. They have some good help. But it doesn't get any better than this. So all I can say is thank you, and please keep up the wonderful work.
Thank you very much.
Anybody else? That we can clap on, folks. The sheriff walked away. Did anybody have any questions for him while he was up here? Okay, thank you. All right, we have item 4 is presentation of Florida League of Cities Certificate of Completion for the Leadership Academy 1 to Vice Mayor Dave Gaddis. Fourth in a series with focus on characteristics to lead through the opportunities and challenges of municipal service. So we have that down here at the presentation table. All right, so I'm going to present this certificate of completion to Vice Mayor Gaddis. He completed Leadership Academy 1. This is run by the Florida League of Cities. We have a certificate for you, and it looks like a letter also, so congratulations.
Good job.
Okay, next four items are consent agenda. I'm going to read all 4 of them. I'll ask for a motion, then we will approve them. There's no discussion on a consent agenda item, folks, so we're just going to pass this fairly quickly. Consent agenda item number 5, approval of July 12th, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Item 6, approval of July 19th, 2021 budget workshop minutes. Item 7, approval of July 17th special City Council meeting minutes. And 8, request, Item 8 is in consent agenda, request authorization for city manager to advertise for legal services. I do believe we're going to have some discussion maybe on that, and we've already passed the agenda.
Can I move at this point to remove item 8 from the consent agenda?
I'm going to have to defer to that, city attorney, because I thought that we had, with once an agenda's passed, you can't move. I thought you could.
Where I pull my hair out.
Yeah, me too, but you got a lot more than me, so pull. Can we move this at this point? I thought once an agenda is approved, you can't, I mean, we're not deleting it, we're just moving it off the consent agenda.
To thoroughly discuss any item, I don't see why you couldn't do that.
We're not removing it, we're just moving it into the regular business. Okay, I have a motion by Leslie Notaro to move item 8 into the regular agenda. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second by Frank Bankert. Discussion? Leslie, your first. Your motion.
Well, we've discussed it. I think we need to have some discussion. That's why I want to move it off the consent and put it on the regular.
I think we need a discussion. Whether it passes or doesn't pass, I think we need to discuss this in fairness to Mr. Riley and to the citizens of this city. Mr. Bankert, anyone else? Comments? I'll move to the city residents. Any comments? Back to council. Leslie, you have the last word.
Let's vote on it.
Okay, so what we're voting on now is a simple movement. We're not passing anything. We're taking item 8 off the consent agenda. We're going to move it, actually it's going to be the next item, so it's going to go right to the regular agenda right before item 9. So a yes vote moves that. Let's do this, Patty, I'm going to do this, I want this done by voice vote, not by voice vote, by one poll, okay?
Councilmember Banker,
Yes.
Councilmember Gunn,
Nay.
Councilmember Notaro,
Yes?
Councilmember Swope, Vice Mayor Gaddis,
Nay.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye, so because we're missing Robanaki, we're deadlocked at 3-3, so the motion fails. So I'll call this consent agenda with item 8 in it. Request authorization for the city manager to advertise for legal services, and this would allow him to, the explanation is city consensus at a budget workshop to advertise a request for proposals. Just note that consensus was 5-2, and one of the persons who voted 5 didn't hear what he was voting on, so it was really 4-3 probably. Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda in its totality. Again, I'm going to ask that this be done in a voice, in a polled vote. So what we're doing, I'll call this question properly, I'll reread it. Item 5, 6, 7, and 8, approval, 5, approval of the July 12, 2021 City Council meeting minutes. Item 6, approval of July 19, 2021 budget workshop minutes. Item 7, approval of July 19, 2021 special City Council meeting minutes. And item 8, request authorization for the city manager to advertise for legal services for the city attorney. Yes vote passes all of them, no vote kills it. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Baker,
No.
Councilmember Gunn,
Aye.
Councilmember Notero. No. Councilmember Swope. Aye. Vice Mayor Gaddis,
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Absolutely not. So it's 3-3. And guess what? Consent agenda is not approved. We will not have any further discussion though on item 8 though, so that will come up at a special meeting if we need it to be. We're without a city attorney, folks, in 2 weeks. Is it 2 weeks, Mr. Riley? 2 weeks, right? We have left?
19th.
19th, we're without a city attorney. Regular agenda. Item 9, regular agenda, Park and Recreation Board event approval. This is for council approval of the events that have been proposed by the board. Funding is in the approved budget. I thought I saw the Parks Board chairperson here. Is she still here? Yes. Would you like to speak with us before we do this?
No, I mean, if you have any questions.
I think we will, yeah.
Sure.
I know I will. So why don't you come up? First, let me get a motion.
So moved.
Dave Gaddis, second. Second, Rita Swope. Dave?
Nope, let's hear it.
Okay. Ms. Lavenda, just give us your information for the record, and then whatever you wish to tell us regarding the proposal, and then we'll go with council questions, then citizen questions.
Okay, I'm not sure if you want me to read this, or, I mean,
Okay, so everyone's received a copy of it. Hopefully they've reviewed it. If you want to just hit us with the highlights and any information that you couldn't put on there that maybe you want to extrapolate on, or anything that you think we need to know before everybody has, there may not be any questions, but I know I have a few, so if
yeah,
you
no,
have some.
yeah, okay, no problem. So we have 3 events that we're looking at towards the end of the year that we're asking you to vote on. One is Jazz in the Park, which is Saturday, September 25th from 5 to 8. So we're just trying to keep them, just from bringing this up over the last couple of months, we just try to cover everybody's points. Like, we wanted to make sure it was a Bel Air Beach private party, residents only. We wanted to keep it simple. It's just low-key, not a lot, no vendors, just relax and listen to some music, sit outside, enjoy the weather, and we get to know some of our neighbors that we don't know. So we try to keep it simple with the budget, and if you have any questions about anything on there, you guys have questions about parking, and we provided the schematics on like where things would be, but because there's so little, there was just maybe 2 or 3 things on each map. The second event would be basically like a Pet and Pals Halloween costume parade for the kids, and I know there's a lot of dogs in this community, so it's just a morning event, a simple parade, and then a contest. And then we had some nice prizes for first, second, and third place, because I know I've seen these before, and people go to a lot of trouble and they spend a lot of money for some of these costumes. So we wanted to make sure that they were, if they really won first place, that they, was appreciative of their prize. And then the third one is just a super simple holiday social tree lighting on Monday, December 6th from 5 to 6 before council meeting. So we figured people would be here and just a little holiday cheer. I put out a bid for some Christmas carolers, and just we would have some, whatever, cookies and hot chocolate, depending on the weather. So, anyway, I'd be happy to answer any questions that you have. But you pretty much have all the information. in the packet that was provided.
I don't really have any questions, but I did want to thank you for this report. That's what I've been asking for a very long time. It was very detailed, very organized, and I really appreciate it. So thank you very much.
No problem.
Chairperson Lavenda, I had some questions for you.
Sure.
And I was at the last event, participated in it, as did most of the people up on this council. And I saw the spin, I read the spin, and then I know.
I'm sorry, what, I don't know what you meant here.
The big event that we have here is Jazz in the Park, and it's analogous to the festival that we had. First
I
off,
wasn't at it, so I'm not familiar with anything.
right,
like
I
that.
was, so that's why I'll give you some information, okay? First off, there was no problem with outsiders attending this. We had a handful of people that attended. I believe one or two people actually commented from Indian Rocks what a wonderful time they had in our city. They got to see it, a chance that they didn't really normally get. There was no overflow, streets were not crowded with people. In fact, the only people that parked on the streets were the vendors. It was far from, there was no street that was full with people. In fact, the citywide garage sale causes one hell of a mess on our streets. This caused no mess on the street. So I don't know that we have to be exclusionary, and I say that for a reason, okay? Just let me finish and then you have your chance to speak, okay? Because I have to vote on this right now, and it's not sitting well with me. And I'll tell you why it's not sitting well with me. We fight with other cities that are exclusionary, that tell us we can't go on their white sand and we can't put our chair where they don't want it to be. And here we are saying you can't come to our park on a Sunday or a Saturday and listen to some jazz music. I mean, this isn't the Clearwater Jazz Festival. This is a small local thing, which I hope that will get nice attendance with our citizens. But it doesn't bother me if someone from Bella Shore or Indian Rocks or Clearwater comes and visits our city. And I'll tell you why. I visit their cities. I go to Largo for their tree lighting. I went to Indian Shores for their Memorial Day picnic. I was invited by their mayor, but it was a beautiful event. It was open to everybody. You had to pay if you were an outsider, but you were able to go. And all the other cities host us. They don't say go home. And I have a real problem putting my name into something where we're going to tell people to go home. And that's my first question is, how are you going to police this? That's my first. And you can answer them all at once. I'm just going to give them to you and then turn the floor back to you. So first is how we're going to police this. I mean, you're really going to send somebody home if they're, from Indian Rocks? I don't like that. That's the first thing.
May I answer in order?
No, let me finish and then you'll have the floor back, okay? I want to get all my points out and then I'll turn it back over to you. This event's not self-funding. Last time we did the festival, a big concern of the council was we set aside a budget for it, but the budget was to be used in the event that the sponsorship and the sales and other things that we did didn't cover the amount of the festival. Well, not only did that Parks Board cover it, they made $1,700 worth of profit, which they turned over to the city manager. And then they did other events like the Halloween parade and stuff. They didn't charge for that. So when I look at this, I mean, the only thing I see that there's an Italian ice vendor, and we're not even getting revenue from that. So the question would be is sponsorship opportunities and or vendor opportunities to try and make this thing. I mean, this is $2,275 for this festival. And there's really no offset to it. So it's really just the city dipping into its pocket to do it. And again, I don't have a problem if we tried and said, well, we only got $1,000 of vendors or of sponsorship. We had people who sponsored last time. They just outright gave us contributions. And I don't see that in here. So that was my second question. And it's not self-funding. Yeah, that was it. That was everything. So basically that it's not self-funding and how you're going to exclude people. If you could convince me that, it's not going to be a scene, because the last thing I need is some nice family coming over the bridge saying, oh wow, there's some music in the park, we want to go and listen. And then we have a big to-do, and the sheriff's telling them to go home, and we're putting the sheriff in a bad place. I don't like that. So I'll turn it back over to you. And I'm coming back to council then, okay?
No worries. Okay, so for the first, being exclusionary, I was only listening to the comments that were made earlier in the year, and I believe that you yourself, mentioned IDing people, which we would never do. I'm more than happy to have people from anywhere that walk over the bridge. We would never exclude anybody, but it seemed to be such a concern of people that were coming to me saying, we're concerned about parking, we're concerned about, just there being crowding, about like blocking like entryway, and so, and like we need a parking schematic. So I was only answering what was requested of us. We would never turn anybody away. And then as far as the fundraising, we voted, because you mentioned that a couple of months ago, we voted as a board. There are basically 4 of us. And just pulling what's on this paper off is gonna be a challenge, but we can do it. But as far as like fundraising and like getting lots of vendors out here, it just wasn't possible. So if we were going to do a fundraising event, because we've already been approved this budget, we would do it for a charity, or we would try to raise money for something for a cause. We wouldn't try to raise money to offset this. So if you don't want to have these, we're not married to them. I won't lose 1 minute of sleep if these things don't happen. It's not to like prove a point. I wasn't at any of the past events. I didn't really even know what I walked into. I was just trying to do something good and fun and like that we could enjoy. Like I've maybe met 4 people that are sitting here. So if you really don't want to have these events, I don't mind. Like, but we're willing to do the work, and we're willing to like do this, and these are so small. And we said, because we're new and we've never done anything like this before, we wanted to start small so we would be successful. If we like get out over our skis and have all these vendors and all these people, like we just couldn't do it. So we voted as a board, and this was what we came up with. If you don't want to do it, we're fine with it. Like we're happy with what we're doing. We feel like we're bringing good things, like as far as like different activities people can attend and different things that they can buy, like LR Beach T-shirts and beach towels and stuff like that. So it's up to you. You guys can vote. I'm not going to fight about it. It's completely up to you. So hopefully that answers.
It does.
Okay.
And no one's trying to tell you can't do it. My job is, I heard a lot last time. I heard a lot. It had to be self-funded. It had to be the greatest event since Woodstock.
I know. I
And guess
missed
what?
all that. So I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like
So,
I'm
you know
in
what?
the fray. We tried to stay out of the fray, and I feel like I'm being pushed into
Yeah,
this.
that's not what I'm trying to do. I want to know, though, what the opportunities were for funding, and you answered the question. I have one other suggestion to you. This is something probably nobody ever thought about, but I did. It's September 25th. Sun sets at 7:21, and you have this going till 8 o'clock, so I don't believe we have lighting back there. You might want to start this 1 hour early from 4 to 7, and this way you'll have everybody leaving in the light, and they'll see what they're doing as opposed to being in the dark. Just a suggestion. Oh, Council?
I think you're doing a great job, and it's going to be hard to live up to the expectations that were set by the last event. However, as far as the problem with people coming in from the outside, I would never expect anyone to turn someone away coming over that bridge or walking off the beach and enjoying our event. I think what they were trying to say is don't advertise. Don't call people from neighboring cities and turn it into a giant festival. Basically, festivals like that, of that proportion, are designed to draw e-commerce, or not e-commerce, but commerce, into a community that actually has businesses. They want people to come for that reason. We don't have that. Therefore, I don't mind it being small. I think it's a great thing. I prefer the intimate Bel Air Beach setting where we get to know people. Whenever the crowds are large, you just can't do that. So I think you're right on track. Yep, it's going to cost a little bit of money. It's not a whole lot, and I'm sure that now that the word is out, there probably will be some donations coming in that may help offset that cost. So great job. And I'm very, very organized. I love the report, love the map. I can tell a lot of work went into this. I also listened to about half of the meeting recording, and I was very impressed with the entire team. Thank you very much. Wayne?
I think you're spot on. I think the original intent was start small, baby steps, and we'll build on that. You were given a budget, you're working within the budget, and there was never any of exclusionary thing. We thought that in order to keep it small, we just manage that through marketing and putting out flyers and stuff like that. So I think they're spot on. My goal is to move forward and go forth and do great things. Good job.
I think you've done an excellent job.
Frank, you gotta get that mic real close to you.
I think you've done an excellent job, blood drives and everything. I guess I'm just an old stickler in the mud. I don't believe government should be dabbling into entertaining people at the taxpayers' expense, because not all taxpayers will be entertained or involved in this. As Mr. Gaddis says, when you see the big signs like in Indian Rocks Beach for a beach fest, that is because they have businesses, okay? And those businesses are putting up the funds and everything like that. I think government should stay out of entertaining people. No disrespect.
No, but like I said, we're not married to these events. If you guys don't want them, it's just less work for us. Like, we're fine with it, but we're more than happy to do it if you guys would like us to do it. I mean, it's just, it's totally fine.
Leslie, do you have any first comments? Glenn's coming back for a second. Go ahead, Glenn.
No, I was just going to say that, the third priority in the strategic plan is community. And this festival is basically an opportunity to bring residents of Delaware Beach together, meet your neighbors, and build a little camaraderie and community cohesion. So, yeah, the entertainment part is maybe the vehicle, but the real priority and purpose is bringing the community together. That's all.
Council comments? Citizens? If there are no citizen comments, back to council. Dave, you want me to call this question? Make the motion?
Sure, call the question.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to call it one at a time. It's not going to be 3 or 0, so it's going to go one at a time. We'll do a voice vote on each of these. First is to approve the September 25th, 2021 Jazz in the Park Festival. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
No. So we have 4 to 2. The opposed are Bankard and Manzo. October 30th, 2021, Pets and Pals Halloween Costume Parade and Contest, 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
It is 5 to 1. Bankard opposed. December 6, 2021, holiday social and tree lighting from 5 to 6 p.m. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
6 to 1, Bankard opposed. I'm sorry, 5 to 1, Bankard opposed. Okay, so all 3 events are authorized. And please give consideration to changing that time by 1 hour.
All right, yeah, no problem.
Make for a lot safer event. Thank you, and thank you to the committee for the hard work. Before we get into the next discussion, at 7:12, you're going for an hour, almost in 15. Does anyone need a break? No one needs a break, we'll move on. Item 10, authorize the city manager to proceed with providing code enforcement services internally. The description is to provide in-house code enforcement for cost savings with more code enforcement hours. This motion was made by the city manager. First, I need a motion.
So moved.
Leslie Natero makes the motion.
Second.
Dave Gaddis seconds. Leslie Natero. Leslie, your motion. You get to talk first.
I think this makes perfect sense. For years, we had our own code enforcement officer rather than paying the sheriffs to do it, and I think it makes sense to do it this way, financially and logistically.
Any other council?
I agree with Councilmember Natoro 100%.
Would this be the removal of the deputy altogether, or are we still going to use the deputy part-time?
No, the deputy wouldn't be used at all. It's how code enforcement's done by the sheriff. It's how many ever hours we want to assign to them, so.
So we would take the sheriff completely out of the equation, right? The problem I have with that is when you have an active sheriff deputy on the street, and you have a public employee doing code enforcement, active deputy knocks on the door, I'm just going to use like short-term rentals, knocks on the door and starts asking questions, okay? Probably going to get a lot of lies, all right? You then can re-say, this is an official investigation. If you lie to me, it's now become a felony. Our code enforcement officer doesn't have that authority. I would think that we should keep the deputy on some type of a retainer to do certain things like that. Our code enforcement person can always, you know, the grass cuttings and other things, and contractors not abiding by the law or whatever like that, use our in-house people on that. But to take away that official capacity of an officer of the law, I think we just put ourselves into a bad situation.
I'd like to ask a question.
Go ahead, and then I saw Glenn's hand, so go ahead.
Lynn, do you know if the deputy actually went through and memorized our code?
No, he did not. That's part of my concern, that we have this partial issue with not knowing all the codes. He's a deputy sheriff, that's what he is. He's not a trained code enforcement officer. He was a retired deputy, and I don't have anything against Danny, who is our current deputy. The fact of the matter is, I'm looking at it from the bigger picture. If you want to keep the sheriff, that's fine with me. But what I want the council to do is realize it's going to probably cost you another $15,000 or $20,000 in code enforcement. Because we need, if we're going to use the sheriff as code enforcement, we need to use it more hours. Okay? Right now he gets 12, 8, you know, depending on what we need him for. But a lot of things get missed. I'm going to give you an example of something that happened today. Last week, he sent an email in to have grass notice sent out, okay, because it was too hot. Today, he sends an email and says, well, we need to do a notice of abatement because it's 36 inches high. This is what the email says to me. And I'm sitting here saying, wait a minute, how did the grass grow from 7 inches to 36 inches in a week? Well, that tells me that we didn't pay any attention to it. And I went and looked at the lot, and it's probably more like 18 or 20 inches. But as far as short-term rentals, that's an iffy subject. I mean, we've had complaints from the property owners that the sheriff is harassing them. So they're kind of up in the air about the short-term rentals, I will tell you that. And we have caught them. The example on 8th Street, there's 2 of them. We've had 2 hearings for that house. And we're investigating possibly a 3rd one. So, but, you know, so to me, at this point, if you want to leave the sheriff, then what I'm going to ask you to do in the budget is increase the budget to a half-time person, which will cost us about $53,000 annually.
Why couldn't we use both?
I think it conflicts it, because it creates a conflict between who's doing what. We're still doing all the administration anyway, so
Well,
the sheriff isn't doing the administration.
As Mr. Gaz would say, you know, did he read the whole code?
No.
You said no. So you say to Dan, okay, this is what you're going to do, Dan. These are the codes we want you to enforce, the ones that we believe that we're going to get snookered on, all right? And we give our in-house person the easy ones, the grass, we can read a ruler or whatever, but the ones that we need an officer of the law, we should have that ability. And as I heard other people in council say, when it comes to spending money, we got the money, and I don't want to spend any money, okay? But I think this is money well spent.
Well, I don't think splitting it up is a good idea. I really don't. I think you either have to do it this way or this way. And I don't have a problem with either way. You know, I've actually discussed it with Danny, I've discussed it with the sheriff's office, and they will say that they need more hours. So if that's what the council chooses to do, if we do 20 hours a week, it will cost us about $53,000 a year for code enforcement. Plus, we're still spending money because the administrative person, who is Laura, still has to do all the letters. The sheriff doesn't do anything with that. They don't touch any of the administrative function of the process.
So she's going to be taxed with more work.
She's doing that now.
Yeah, but now she'll be doing field work.
Well, that's why I asked for a part-time person in the office.
How much is that going to cost us?
It's a wash with the current situation.
So if it's a wash, then why would we want to get rid of the sheriff department?
It's a wash if you don't have the sheriff's department, is what I'm telling you. It's a wash in cost-wise.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, you're going to be bringing on somebody part-time, correct? And that's the
Right.
wash?
It'll be a wash because we're going to use that part-time person to fill in for Laura internally. Okay. And then Laura will go out in the field. So the cost difference in code enforcement is a wash currently. Now, if you want to leave the sheriff, then we just need to increase the.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is we're going to use 2 civilians when we're giving up a deputy or an officer of the law. That just doesn't make any sense.
Lynn, were you done, Councilmember Baker?
Hang on one second. Glenn Gunn has the floor next. And
Oh, I'm
please
sorry.
Please get my attention first before you just jump in. Mr. Gunn, go ahead.
A little corporate history on this thing. Several councils back, we moved to go to a sheriff's office because we felt we needed some authority and a guy with a uniform and badge going to go. Reluctantly, it was undertaken because there were some current concerns about training and that sort of thing. The city manager has been monitoring the situation, and training was a consideration for this thing, and the results just didn't come around with this thing. The guy who manages this thing tactically is the city manager. He's saying he can do a more effective job, more efficiently, cost neutral, if we go with his proposal. We always have a sheriff's deputy on call within Bel Air Beach, and he can be tasked with code enforcement. Is that my understanding?
Well, he can be, if we have an issue that we need the code enforcement to deal with it, yes, he can be tasked.
So I guess my point is we're covered with the sheriff's office.
So we're going to call the sheriff, Mr. Gunn, if we have a...
No, not to go check the grass or police the grass, but...
How about a rental violation?
A what?
That should be the tactical supervisor's job. I'm not going to micromanage this guy.
Well, that's what I'm
He
saying.
says he can do it more effectively, more efficiently.
You can't do it more efficiently. The word efficient
Guys,
is...
wait, there's not supposed to be a crosstalk, and I appreciate the debate, but let's have, Mr. Gunn has the floor. Come back to you, Mr. Vanguard. Go ahead, Glenn Gunn.
And lastly, the thing is with the change in the Florida statutes where you cannot call in anonymously, it's going to put more strain on the code enforcement system. So you need to have somebody out there who is well-versed, well-trained, and it's going to take one of our people to do that, who knows the codes. And right now, that's Laura. So
Well, you make a good point. If you're done, don't want to interrupt you, but with this new law, and I advise all you people out there to tell your friends and neighbors, call your council person when you have a complaint and make them belly up to the bar and file the complaint with the city so you can stay anonymous.
Just a real quick question, City Manager Reeves. How many times has the sheriff knocked on a rental property and nobody's answered because the man is standing there in the uniform with the sheriff's vehicle?
Oh, that happens regularly, and we do get a lot of complaints about that they're sending a sheriff's deputy, and they can, we just had one recently that complained that he didn't want the sheriff's deputy on his property. That house actually. And I think you may get a little more information from the sheriff's deputy, maybe sometimes, but, you know, I've dealt with the short-term rentals myself on various occasions. And I've gotten more information out of the people who are there than the sheriff's deputy has in the past. And I think it's just the individual sometimes, how you handle it. That's really what I think it is. But like I said, all I'm asking is, if you want to leave it as it is, all I'm asking you to do is increase the budget so I can say to the sheriff, you've got 20 hours a week.
I'd like to say a few words. Because I've been watching this for the last 2 years, and I've been told I can't talk about it. I was told that by Danny Doherty, who's been telling me what's been going on. And y'all aren't going to like some of the stuff I have to say, and don't bother to call a point of order, because every piece of this is a fact. A fact. From a deputy. Remember, we were support blue in this city? Okay, let's talk about Deputy Doherty. Number one, he was invited personally by me tonight. I don't see him here. Sheriff, you hear me? Please tell Sheriff Goltieri how disappointed I am in him. Not for the patrol that you did here, that was perfect. Your superiors would not let Deputy Doherty come here tonight and speak for himself. They told him he could not come to this meeting, not in uniform, not as a civilian. Does 1983 mean anything to the sheriff? It should. You just deprived that man of his opportunity to speak to this council. Deputy Doherty offered to do ride-alongs with every one of us so that we could see what he goes through. And I don't place blind allegiance into Mr. Reeves or to anyone else. As Ronald Reagan said, trust but verify. I'll trust but I'll verify what you tell me. And let's verify some of that stuff you just told people here. You don't get information from the sheriff's office. Well, this is something that's near and dear to my heart because I serve on the emergency board of all of Pinellas County. And I'm in the process of trying to get us a new CAD system. That's computer-assisted dispatch. And that puts all the information about a call at not only the sheriff's disposal, but in the future, we hope that it'll put it at fire and ambulance. That's what we're trying to do. What I'm holding here are CAD reports. Laura Mataloni could never do this. This is in the sheriff's system, okay? Every time Danny Doherty hits a building or a house in this town, there's a record of it. I'll give you one example. I'm not going to say the place. Trash in roadway. Remove trash in northbound lanes of Gulf Boulevard, placed it in the dumpster in City Hall, Gulf Boulevard and 20th. Every time he goes someplace, this is in the CAD system. Why is that important? You can search upon it. If there's any criminal activity or if there's a pattern of any problems in that house, the sheriff can use it for law enforcement. That's a benefit that the sheriff gives us that we'll never get going inside. That's number one. Frank Bankert's talking about having a uniformed officer. One of the reasons that we did this was that we only have one person at any given moment in Bel Air Beach. And that's all we need. We're a small city and it's working great so far. This gives us a second person. There have been multiple opportunities where Danny Doherty answered a call while he was doing code. He was the responding officer. And Lynn Reeves yelled at him for doing it. He saved a person. It was a hot call. It was an assault. He was the first responder. He was only a block or two away. He heard it. He responded. He also hit the pause button on his timer of the time that he gives us in Bel Air Beach. He finished the hot call, put himself at risk, because he's a darn good officer. And he answered that call, and then he came back and he gave us more time than his shift. His shift has been progressively cut down over time. One of the reasons why we went to an outside code enforcement officer is that our internal code enforcement officer doesn't work weekends. Well, guess what, bad people, bad boys and girls? When are you going to put that new roof on or put that new door in that you don't want code to see? Let me give you an opportunity. Saturday, Sunday? Yeah, that would be the right answer, and that's exactly what they did. As for having we're saying that he doesn't know the code memorized. I challenge anybody to memorize our code. Do you know it's illegal to have a lawn chair in your front yard for more than 24 hours? Go see any of the cities that have that one, okay? Yeah, the baby even knows that's wrong, okay? Nobody knows that, and nobody's going to be enforcing that. We have some laws that I just shake my head at and go, why did we put this here? Okay? It's a beach community. It's not a condo association. So maybe he doesn't know everyone, but he knows the main ones. When he first came on, I met him. And I said, Danny, I had a lot of complaints about the past. It was when I went around door to door. I was like Frank Bankert. I went door to door. That was my number one complaint. Uneven code enforcement, lack of code enforcement, retaliatory code enforcement. City manager will pull my campaign sign like he did. He leaves other people's in. Interesting. Maybe he wasn't a big supporter of me. That was all over the city with stuff like that. People were driven out of this city before they ever completed their house. That's verified. The person lived on Harbor Drive. They got so fed up at Bel Air Beach, they're like, we don't want to live here. I haven't had a complaint yet about Danny Doherty. Not a complaint yet. And I've told this story many times before. There was a house on the corner by me. It was tremendously overgrown for years. Years. So you wonder just what our code people were doing. All of them. Okay? And I watched Danny. I didn't hear him, but I watched him from my window deal with a fairly difficult owner. And that house, if you go there today, looks beautiful. It's not going to be on the cover of Better Homes and Gardens or anything. It is a nice looking house. It fits in well. Danny did it without threats, without summonses, without hauling people into court. Danny Doherty also, folks, he told me this story. Again, he told me not to tell this stuff, so I had to sit by. When he first came here, somebody had a pile of debris. He was catching all kinds of flack from City Hall here. Danny and his daughter, on their own time, went and picked up this elderly person's debris and took it to the dump. And no good deed ever goes unpunished. He got to the bridge and it blew out of the back of his truck. And he had to pick it all up off the road. Okay? That's Danny Doherty, folks. Let me tell you something else Danny Doherty just did. I'm not going to mention the lady's name, although I know it and I think it's a public record at this point. You know, you've all seen that commercial, Help, I've fallen and I can't get up, right? Well, that happened in Bel Air Beach. Woman's family called. No one'd seen her for 4 days. Relatives didn't know where she was. Danny been on patrol. The house didn't look right to him. He is paying attention. Maybe he doesn't know every species of weed, but he knew something was wrong with that house. The other officer said, "Dad, we can't go in." Danny's like, "This is exigent circumstances, we're going in." Finally, they tried the handle on the door. They opened up the door because it was wide open. And there was the lady, having fallen and couldn't get up for almost 4 days. She was near death. Danny Doherty deserves our highest reward, folks. We lose our city attorney in one night, and now we're going to lose our law enforcement code officer. Wrong. And that's not all. Mr. Reeves, I've heard about the treatment he's received in City Hall from you and Laura, and it's disgusting. You complained that I created a hostile work environment with you. He described your environment as toxic. You don't even, Patty Gentry, they don't even say good morning to this man. They got the nerve to go and take pictures with the police and say, we support Blue. Well, that's how they treat him when they're not on camera, folks. His time has been progressively cut from 14 hours to 8 hours. He doesn't work weekends anymore. In fact, he was told never to work without Lynn Reeves being present. Why? Does he not know what he's doing? Well, why don't you go pick up the telephone and call one of my counterparts, Mayor Mary Beth Henderson of Reddington. They use Danny Doherty, and they're happier than a clam with him. He seems to know their code. Now for all the people who are analytical and numbers people. I'd like to see the comparison of how many things that Danny has found in this city and hits, which is this, versus what Laura's hit. I don't see much of a difference. The code reports look the same to me. I drive around the city. It looks very nice. Yes, we occasionally get an individual that creates a problem, and it's taken care of. And it's done without problems. It's done without threats of law enforcement. It's done without being heavy-handed. I had to laugh when Mr. Reeves said that Danny was complaining about a short-term rental. I got one of those telephone calls. And guess what? I got a complaint about Mr. Reeves one time on a short-term rental. He was here on a Sunday and my doorbells got him. And you know what I said? Man, we can't have a short-term rental. And I support the city manager on that. Instead of faulting Danny Doherty without even knowing what he did, how about supporting Blue? That's what we're supposed to stand for, right? In terms of the money, Well, if we can spend $5,000 for a wave sign, don't tell me about the money. We've used money here for when we want to use money. We just spent $4,000 for public relations events. How about safety and security? It's supposed to be our number one thing in our strategic plan. Danny Doherty is getting another bad deal from the city, and I don't like it. I don't like the way he's been treated. I don't like what I hear. I don't like the way this is being supervised. I don't like anything about this. He's an excellent sheriff. He's a highly skilled sheriff. This guy was an instructor for the SWAT team. He's no lightweight. He's smart and he has the right temperament. He's an excellent sheriff. He's an excellent code officer. There is an option to do both. Other cities do it. I'm friends with a code officer in a big city, and I'm not going to say what city that is, because I don't want that person to be harassed. But you can split it. And there's also another opportunity. The county offers code services, so we don't have to use Laura inside. But if we are going to do Laura inside for code, maybe everybody forgot this little tidbit, but I didn't forget it. When we gave Laura the inside job, when she came inside, because she used to be full-time code, when she came inside, Mr. Reeves gave her a $6,000 raise. Well, if she's going to go outside for 40%, my accountant in me tells me we get $2,400 back. You don't get a $6,000 raise and go back to do your old job. I don't support this at all. And if we are going to support it, then let's get the money back when we need to claw it back. Because she's not doing the job that we gave her 2 years ago. She's doing a different job right now. I had nothing but complaints about Laura. Nothing. And I've heard her personality. The other day I heard a telephone call. June called headquarters. It sounded like there was a funeral going on here, the way that phone was answered. It was embarrassing. So quite frankly, I don't support this. And if we get all kinds of complaints, it's coming back to this council. Because somebody said, the buck stops with me. That same person told me I don't manage the city manager. You can't have it both ways. You vote for this, you own your vote. I get code complaints, we'll come back here and we'll deal with them as a council. I'm disgusted and embarrassed. And Sheriff, when you tell Sheriff Galtieri that I was upset that Danny wasn't allowed to be here, also tell him that the mayor apologizes for the treatment that Deputy Doherty got in Bel Air Beach.
I would just like to qualify Mr. Bankard's statement about anonymous calls. Call your council member. From past experiences on the council, that's not necessarily true in light of sunshine and public records laws. I have seen people come back and do a public records request asking for specific names. So I guess what I'm saying is there is no cone of silence that comes down and gives you 100% anonymous details. You're always subject, and the council members are subject to public records requests. So they can come out if it's really there.
Well, Mr. Gunn, as long as there's a record, you're right.
Right. Just there you go.
Mr. Gunn's right. As long as there's a public record, you're right. I'm on the 6th Street beach just about every day, Monday through Friday. Come see me, there's no record.
City Council, any other comments before I open up to the citizens? Citizens. Sir. Please talk right into that microphone.
Okay, I do have the experience now, so.
Perfect. We're still learning here.
Okay, so again, my name is Fuad. I'm living right off of Bayshore. So I actually had an experience with the code enforcer. Danny is his name. Not myself, but heard it through the neighbor next door. The experience that my neighbor had, which was passed on to me, it was much more human, much more friendly dealing with the officer Then it's the lady that who does the, so I'm just out here to tell the council, the members that we're here to support our existing code enforcer. Okay.
Thank you. Mr. Hansick.
John Hansick, 22nd Street. For what it's worth, I concur with the previous speaker. Keep the deputy. We spend money in different places for different things. We can afford the extra money, I believe, to keep Deputy Doherty on staff as he was originally supposed to be, not as it's been modified. I like the idea of having him on staff as an extra law enforcement based on what you described. So I encourage council to keep him as code enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hansick. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Lori. I live on Bay Shore, sitting next to my husband. I've had good experiences with Officer Doherty. I find him to be professional. I find to be very good in neutralizing situations. We have had issues with neighbors, fences, things like that. I think he has a lot of good qualities in our community that benefit our community with his approach to how he handles things. I have called over here a couple different times and dealt with different people who answer the phone, and I have to concur that the demeanor and the lack of information is noticeable. We live here now full-time since 2014. We bought our house in 06. We were visiting from 06 to 2014. So anyways, you'll see us at more meetings. And I vote for keeping him on, and if that makes a difference. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes.
Jim Vinskoy, 7th Street, Bel Air Beach. I've had a couple opportunities to speak to the Deputy Doherty, and in speaking to him, I've heard many a times he's told me that he's backed up other deputies while he was on duty. Now, let's think about this. He cuts off the time clock for Bel Air Beach to make that happen. He goes on the sheriff's time clock with no added expense to the city, so we have a backup. And with the, I spoke to him also about the lady that had fallen, and it was very disheartening to find out that this city, the neighbors, didn't even know that this lady had health issues, or took the time. But we had an officer who paid attention in our community to know when there's an issue, okay? He cared. And it's about him picking up that was not only Deputy Doherty, but I want you to know that his daughter that helped him is also a sheriff deputy. So they both did that off the clock, out of the goodness of their heart. And that's what the sheriff is all about. They work with people. That's what we're supposed to be about, helping each other, being a community. And I don't see that happening with Laura. When we went around campaigning for the mayor, we heard nothing but complaint after complaint after complaint. Some people weren't even given enough time to respond to the notice that they were given to comply because they just moved in. They had no idea that these things had existed. So I say We need to keep this deputy. Not only that, he has said time and time again that he is willing to work nights and weekends. When do we have a lot more problems? Nights, weekends. So why would we not do that, especially since our current code officer does not want to do that? Coupled with the fact, again, she was given $6,000 more to go into the office. That was the deal. So if she's coming back to the street, we should get that money back. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other citizen comments? There being none, I'm coming back to council. Council? Leslie Nutera, you have the last word before we call the question.
Just one.
Go ahead, Frank, and then Leslie will have last word. Go ahead.
While I voted no on 3 items for parks, a couple of colleagues said, this is a great way to get involved, know your community. I haven't heard one person out there saying to get rid of it. So we'll see how this vote goes, whether we listen to you or not.
Yeah, and I'm just going to say I had to endure 115 days of horns beeping outside my window because people supposedly support blue. Some people were right on this council who supported blue. They supported blue with financial contributions and they held signs. I'm going to be watching that vote too, and so is that young lady with the camera. Go ahead. Leslie, you have the last word.
I think it makes sense, like I said, financially and logistically, to bring it back in-house.
All right, so here I'm calling the question at this point. Item 10, to authorize the city manager to proceed with providing code enforcement services internally. Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask that this roll be called. You're not on mic.
Councilmember Baker? No. Councilmember Gunn?
Yes.
Councilmember Notero?
Yes.
Councilmember Swope?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Gaddis?
No.
Mayor Manzo?
No. So, motion fails. Danny will stay on, and I'll be...
I'd like to ask one question.
Sure.
As I told you earlier, it doesn't matter to me either way, but I think we need to increase the budget for 20 hours.
We have a budget session coming up. Make your proposal. I want to talk with you about better utilizing the sheriff's time that we have for these events, because we have the sheriff directing traffic, and that's not what I had in mind. So let's talk about cost savings areas and what we can do. That's a budget session, but I don't see why a few thousand, if that's our priority, should be a problem here.
Okay, so I'll make the adjustment and bring it to you when
Yes, please. And Mr. Reeves, Mr. Doherty and I are friends, so I'm just going to leave it at that, okay? He'll tell me what's happening.
Well,
if there's any
Mr. Mayor,
pushback, okay?
I don't appreciate your negative comments about me.
I don't give a damn if you appreciate my negative
Mayor
comments. You treat this guy like garbage.
Point of order.
You treat this guy like garbage, and I'm sick of it.
Well, you don't hear both sides of the story.
No, I don't, but I hear his.
Well, you don't.
And I'll go with, we support blue in my house. We're done with this discussion. Item 11, ordinance 21-05, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for an amendment to section 22-33B16 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for approval of amendment to section 22-33B16 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. The description is to modify prohibited conditions that may cause flooding and adversely affect surrounding properties. Madam Clerk, am I correct? This is the first reading?
Yes.
Okay, it doesn't say that, but I'm going to put that note. There's 2 readings for those of you who are new to this. This is the first reading. There'll be a second reading if this passes at the next council meeting, regular session, then it becomes an ordinance change. With that, may I have a motion?
So moved.
Rita Swope makes the motion. Second is Frank Bankard. Rita Swope.
I'll go ahead and defer to our city manager.
City Manager.
This ordinance change was recommended by the planning board when they did the code review. So this is the process we've been doing, bringing forward a couple each month to move those recommendations forward.
I note that there's the curb inserts. I think that's what we're talking about with the blocking of the curbs and valley curbs. And I think there's and I want to just check with the city attorney that there is I know there's a provision for ADA accessibility. That was our biggest concern about that. We don't obviously want the curbs blocked because it restricts water. Are you happy with that wording for ADA purposes? Is that sufficient?
I'm the author of that language.
And you're happy with it?
Exceptionally happy with it.
Okay.
And in writing it, went and looked at a number of resources related to the ADA, and that is the specific language that's used, so it's consistent with the ADA guidelines that I reviewed.
Perfect. Thank you, Fred.
Yes, sir.
That was the only concern that I had. Anyone else on council? We'll move to the citizens. Any comment on this ordinance? Back to council. Do you have any last words?
Oh, I'm all right. I'm ready for you to call a question.
I'm ready to do it too. Ordinance 21-07, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for an amendment to Section 22-33B16 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for approval of amendment to Section 22-33B16 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. This is the first reading. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Point of order. Did you just say ordinance 2107?
If I did, it's 2105. I'll stand corrected if I did say that. You were listening, so, yep. If I said 2107, it's 2105. Madam Clerk.
Councilmember Baker.
Aye.
Councilmember Guns.
Aye.
Councilmember Notaro.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope.
Aye.
Vice Mayor Gavas.
Aye.
Mayor Manzo.
Aye, passes 6-0. First reading, Madam Clerk, you'll advertise it, and we'll be back for a second reading in September, right? Perfect. How we all doing? It's about 8 o'clock. Anybody need a break? Good? Nobody say anything? We're good. Ordinance 2106, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for amendments to Section 10-2, 10-32B1, 10-32B4, 10-35, 10-37, 10-38A2, 10-7414, and 10-77-7 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for approval of amendments to Section 10-2, 10-32B1, 10-32B4, 10-35, 10-37, 10-38A2, 10-7414, and 10-77-7 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. The description is to modify the legal standards related to buildings and building regulation. First motion.
So moved.
Rita Swope, second.
Second.
Second, Dave Gaddis. Rita Swope.
I'll go ahead and defer to the city manager.
Lynn Reeves.
Mayor and council, this is just another changes that the planning board recommended, and we reviewed those probably 4 months ago roughly, and we're just bringing the updated ordinances to you a couple of times.
City Council? I have a question for you, Mr. City Manager. At first I thought we changed this because I had a question when we had it in work session. But then I went back and looked at the code, and it actually says this. So I'm going to read it. It's only one sentence. Oh, it's 2 sentences. We'll put it in context. And then you can tell me what's meant by it. Because this is existing now, and then the new one will incorporate that. So 10-35 sanitary facilities. Yes, it's glamorous being mayor of Bel Air Beach. We're talking about sanitary facilities. A portable sanitary facility shall be supplied to a new construction site within the city after the initial grading has been completed and before the foundation work has begun. We're cool. Such portable sanitary facility shall be maintained at the site in an inconspicuous location to be specified in the site plan until after the hookup of interior sanitary facilities. So my question is, since I've built my own house and seen plenty of others being built, typically they are not able to place them any further than curbside. So what exactly is an inconspicuous location, and is every house that's ever been built here in violation of this ordinance? Because I really don't want to revise it and still have it vague.
Well, what was brought up about this by the Code Review Board was the fact that porta potties sometimes aren't set back in the lot a little bit. They're end up in the curb, they end up in the roadway. So that's what the code review committee was trying to change a little bit. To try to get the contractors to maybe put some shielding in front of them, or, you know, as an example, I'll use a house that's being built on Gulf Boulevard. They have a fence around it, so their porta potties is probably inside. But that's what the concept was that the code.
And that's what I thought. And then we run into problems with having fencing in your front yard, which is also illegal. And I mean,
Not during construction. You can have a fence.
Silk fence, not a regular fence.
You can have a fence. It's just like on Gulf Boulevard. If somebody wants to.
I guess here's my point. If we want to fence it, then let's say we want it fenced. I don't care, my house is built. It really doesn't matter to me. I think it's ridiculous because, quite frankly, it's hard enough for them to pump the darn stuff out of this without having more hazards to go around. But if it's so important that we have a fence around it, then make the person build a fence. It's a small expense to pay when you're building a house. With that said, I have no idea what inconspicuous meant. I think if I polled 10 people, we'd get 10 different things. It's really hard when you clear cut a lot to have anything inconspicuous. It's a flat lot of sand, and they can't really put it in the back because they won't go off-road with their heavy trucks, and then they got to pump the stuff out, and they don't want to go in the back and pump it out. So all I'm saying is, as long as we're revising this now, can we make it to something that people could understand? And if we want fencing, then say fencing, and if we want people to use their best effort conspicuous, then say that. But this, the way I read this right now, I wouldn't know what to do. And I tell you, the Porta John guy just drops it in your front yard. So,
I mean, we're just using the words that they wanted it shielded. That's what they really wanted. And this came directly from the planning board report.
let's say that. And how would we like it shielded? A fence, gold bars? I mean, what would we like?
I think this is giving the contractor the flexibility to work with his surroundings, and I see no reason at all to make it very specific. I think it's plain as day. Inconspicuous or shielded location. Don't make it such a big eyesore, you know?
Well, as an attorney,
Of course.
Yes, see, when we're passing law, folks, people up here don't want to deal with an attorney, but you will down the road anyway, okay? So as an attorney, you read it for void, for vagueness. Yoli Rodero is nodding her head. She's also an attorney and a professor at that. So this is vague. I don't know what inconspicuous means. It means something to Lynn Reeves, it means something to Laura, it means something to the code guy. And if you ask 10 people, so if you want it shielded, say you want it shielded. That's simple. Inconspicuous, it means something to everybody. Inconspicuous to me may mean, like what Lynn just said, I don't want it dropped in the curb. You know, hard to disagree with that, okay? But inconspicuous, I gotta hide it behind a tree in my backyard and now my neighbor's gonna smell it? You know what? Leave it at the front curb. It's only a couple of months. I got pictures of people in this room who built houses, had their porta john right at the front. We did it too. That's where they dropped them. So I don't know, you know, we have a 25-foot setback and you can't have anything in it. So I don't know how you can make it inconspicuous unless you happen to have some palm trees that are small. I don't know how you're going to do that. If you want it shielded, just say you want it shielded. That's simple.
Shielding it is an option according to this, inconspicuous or shielded.
Okay, but I don't know what inconspicuous, I just don't understand what inconspicuous means. I don't, sorry.
So shielded.
Has it been an issue?
We're changing it.
Has it been an issue with what?
Well, I mean, the wording inconspicuous has been in the ordinance since it's...
We've had a few complaints about porta potties. Most recently on 15th Street, probably the most.
I know that.
So, you know, and I understand to some degree, but porta potties are part of construction. That's the life of construction. You know? It's not like you have a restroom.
It's not an outhouse, is what you're saying. Yeah, I agree.
So in other words, a construction site is a construction site, and let's deal with it by exception rather than start redoing all the codes to withstand the scrutiny of a Supreme Court case.
You're redoing the code now, Mr. Gunn. That's what we're doing. This is a motion to redo the code. So if we're going to redo it, do it right instead of doing it wrong. I don't know. That's just a legal thought. Make your laws right, not wrong. Yes, sir.
Yes. I probably use the porta john more than anybody in this room. So, the fact here is, we only have about a 15-foot honey dipper hose. You put it too far away, you can't clean it out. All right? Then you really get the smell. I mean, you think red tide's bad? All right, so it should be as close to an area where the truck can pull up. Bottom line. And the other thing I have a big problem with is the second page here. 6 p.m. to 7 a.m. on weekdays.
Frank, they can't hear you.
I'm sorry.
There you go.
I gotta learn how to use this. 6
Not that hard.
6 p.m. to 7 a.m. A lot of people have told me they would like that 7 a.m. to move to 8 a.m. Okay, especially on the weekends. In the construction business, if it says 7 a.m., you get guys pulling up at 6:30 in the morning, yakking, drinking coffee out in front of the construction site. It's a lot better to have them yakking at 7:30 in the morning.
Frank, I'll agree with you. And it's not just the yakking. They back up, they've got the automatic beepers on the back when they're beeping, coming down the block, you hear them, you know, and not everybody gets up. Some people, I see a person here who works evenings and is sleeping at that time of the day, so, you know, definitely not something that's desirable here. We could move it an hour.
Just to clarify, all that was added to this was conspicuous was evidently already there, or shielded.
I said that, yeah. I said that. I just didn't know what inconspicuous meant. Anyway, to Mr. Bankard's point, he's talking about hours. He has a problem with the hours.
The hours on Saturday, is that what you said?
I have a problem with, I'm doing pretty good here. I have a problem with 7 a.m. anytime, especially on Saturdays. I think it should be 8 a.m. across the board, 8 to 6.
An hour, yeah.
I'll disagree with that, and the reason why is because at 8 a.m., many people in our neighborhoods are going to work. You've got big trucks, heavy machinery. Hopefully, they're all moved in by 8 o'clock. Otherwise, you're going to be fighting with them to get out as they're trying to get in. So I'm okay with 7.
Well, you're only going to fight with them on the initial day that they start up, and most contractors will drop their equipment off the night before anyway. So, plus the backup alarms and everything like that, as the mayor says, they go off.
Council, any other comments? Glendon?
Call the question.
Nope, can't do that. But I'll run the meeting, but thank you. Citizens. Mr. Hansick, see, had I followed Mr. Gunn, I would have been breaking the law. I don't want to break the law.
That's why we pay you the big bucks.
I do get the big bucks, and thank you. I appreciate the bonus, too.
John Hansick, 22nd Street. I can appreciate what the committee tried to do, but let's face reality. Porta potties are part of construction. And like was mentioned momentarily, you put that thing too far off of the street and they can't pump it out. It ain't broke, don't fix it. Speaking about the time though, I have something that maybe the city needs to take a look at, and I know this from personal experience. Several years ago, after we bought our house, we were over here for a weekend working on it, and unfortunately the transformer right there on our property blew in August. Notified Duke. Best they could do is get somebody out there, you know, next morning. This was Saturday night. They showed up Sunday morning. They started working before 7 o'clock. Some schmuck, and I mean some schmuck on 23rd, called the sheriff. On 23rd, on the other side, the north side, they had power. So we had to wait until after 8 o'clock. There needs to be an exception in our code, if you will, for emergencies. And I'll bring out something else, okay, for simple reasons. And it's obvious. I have a diagnosis that requires me to use oxygen at night. That machine goes down, I can still breathe, okay, don't get me wrong. But if it's for an extended period of time, I might be SOL. So you need to do something with the code for emergency use. I mean, it doesn't give, Duke isn't gonna make exceptions, but there are other people who have medical conditions that need that power 24/7. But back to this thing, it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Mr. Hansick, just as a piece of information, the way the rule is written, it does say, it gives the hours 6 to 7, weekends, except for public holidays, and then it says, except in case of urgent necessity to protect public health and safety, and then only with authorization from the city manager or his or her designee. So, yeah, by then it'd still be 7 o'clock and you still won't have power. So, again, city manager, and I will speak in his defense, is usually available at pretty crazy hours sometimes, and I've seen him work on the weekends doing certain things, particularly with short-term rental, but, is he available every morning at 7 o'clock or on a Sunday or a Saturday? I mean, I don't know. I doubt it. I doubt any of us would be on every day, so, nor is it required. So maybe that's a problem. Maybe this thing isn't ready for, prime time. I mean, if we're gonna look at these ordinances, like I said, let's make them right. Get it right. We're not going to revise them again, hopefully anytime soon. So, but thank you. Just I wanted to let you know there was an emergency thing, but you got to go to Congress to get an authorization.
I think, like I said, I think it was early on, coming over on weekends, and it just happened to be within a couple of months of purchasing the house. But like I said, and we didn't know at the time, you had to go through the city manager, tell the power company or tell the deputy it's okay, which still doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But thank you, sir.
But thank you. Other citizens' comments? You come back to council. No final comments? You have Glenn?
I believe the protocol has been met. Call the question, please.
Now, if we're going to call the question, it actually has to be voted on, Mr. Dunn. I was ready to do that anyway because nobody made any comments, but if you'd like, we'll go through the protocol to call the question. You sure you want to do this? Because I was going to do it anyway. Nobody was making any comments. Withdraw it. Withdraw it? Or you want me to?
Go to the expert.
If you call the question, I need to get a second. We need to have a majority. I think it's debatable. I have to check my cheat sheet. Or we can just say nothing. That's
Call
what we're
the
getting right
question,
now.
please.
Perfect. Rita Swope decides on that. Rita, you have the last word.
Call the question.
Certainly. Ordinance 2106, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Bel Air Beach, Florida, providing for amendments to Section 10-2, 10-32B1, 10-32. B4, 10-35, 10-37, 10-38A2, 10-7414, and to 10-77-7 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for incorporation of recitals, providing for approval of amendments to Section 10-2, 10-32B1, 10-32B4, 10-35, 10-37, 10-38A2, 10-7414, and 10-77-7 of the City Code of Ordinances, providing for a copy to be kept on file, providing for severability, providing for the repeal of all ordinances in conflict herewith, and providing for an effective date. Madam Clerk, this is reading 1, right?
Yes.
Reading 1, okay. So we'll call the roll, please.
Councilmember Gunn.
Aye.
Councilmember Notaro.
Aye.
Councilmember Swope.
Aye.
Councilmember Baker.
No.
Vice Mayor Gaddis.
Aye.
Mayor Manta.
No. So it passes 4-2, first reading. Madam Clerk will advertise it, and we'll bring it back for a second reading and final reading in September. Unfinished business, do we have any? There is none. City Attorney, Fred Riley.
Yes.
It is your time.
I would ask the city council to give me the flexibility to propose a way forward and let me explain it fully. I've been sitting here thinking very diligently about what would be the most appropriate thing. So with your authority, I'll explain what I think you should do.
This is your time as city manager, as city attorney. We don't even need to give permission. Does anybody have any objections? You have the floor.
Okay, I'll say several things that are factually based. This evening, 3 of the council members asked me to reconsider. 3 of the council members voted in favor of, and those 3 that asked me to reconsider did not vote for going forward with the RFP process. So 3 of you did. So it obviously is a standoff. The councilwoman Robin Aki is not here, and I think it would be inappropriate for me to guess what her view on this would be. And I'm not going to project what her view may be. But as I said earlier, the difficult thing for the city council is you'll have to discuss things in public. So as we've seen tonight, that is a messy process at times. The thing that I will suggest to you is the best way forward is to do 2 things. One is to, normally at mid-month you have your work session, and to have a special meeting where you consider whether you want to go forward with the RFP process. And at that special meeting, in an ideal world, all 7 of the council members would be here, and one way or another would decide to go with that or not. So I again stress that I have been a lawyer a long time. I've parted ways with clients, and I am going to be professional about what I do, and that's not going to stop. I may not like some things, but I'm going to be professional about it. Having said that, the reason that I picked August 19th was that was 30 days. My contract required me to give you 30 days notice. If y'all had decided to go ahead tonight with the RFP process, then you have a pretty defined timeline as to when you would be able to bring somebody new on, okay? Without being able to go forward with the RFP, you don't have a defined timeline. So the second part of my proposal is that I will move the resignation date to the day after your first meeting in September. And that way, you have an attorney available to get you to the Tuesday, or the first meeting in September is September 6th, so I'm sure that's the holiday. Okay, so September 8th, I would suggest I move the date to September 9th, and at the workshop, if y'all decide to go forward with the RFP process, then, you know, I don't know what I'll decide, although I probably do know. But that to me is fair. It gives you all the ability to have an attorney, and the last thing I want to do for any client is leave them high and dry and not able to do things in the interim. So that's my proposal. 2 things. One, schedule your workshop, but also schedule a special meeting to address the RFP issue, and because you have to do something. And also, I will, if y'all agree to this, then tomorrow I'll send an email following up and changing my resignation date to September 9th, and that way everything's covered. And I think that's a very realistic and reasonable proposal.
It's more than fair. It's more than fair, given what's happened here. You didn't have to do that.
Well, I left one thing out. This is an easy yes or no type of decision,
Yeah.
and it really shouldn't require any great debate. To me, it's a very fair thing, and it does what really should be done I mean, there's two attorneys on the council, and the two attorneys know as well as I do, you have, as a Florida attorney, you have an obligation to do what's in the best interest of your client, and you're obligated to put that ahead of even your own interest. And that's what I'm trying to do.
Mr. Reese, when is our, we haven't scheduled it yet for a work session. What were you thinking, the 16th of August? You're not on.
It's the 16th. Yeah, we discussed that. We're going to do the sign ordinance that night.
Right.
And there'll be some comments about the budget a little bit, not a whole lot, because we've pretty much been through it. We will have the, well, that'll be something I'll speak about at my return.
I want to poll for availability over here. Rita Swope, are you available on the 16th?
It's going to take me a moment.
Coming right down. All right, I'm going to skip you and come right back to you. Leslie Nataro? David?
Yes.
I am. Glenn? Frank Bankert?
I can make myself available.
Okay.
I don't agree with any of this. I think this, I appreciate him giving us till September. I don't know if I would be that kind-hearted. I think we should have an emergency council meeting this week. If Robin's in town, I don't know where she is. But I mean, if the majority of council wants us to go without a city attorney and put this whole city at risk, let them be answered at the ballot box.
I'm with you. I can call it for any night we want. I have that authority. That's why I was polling to make sure we get, I really want 7 council members here, and then you own your vote. I'm with you. I want people to own that vote. But I don't want it. Mr. Riley has given us he didn't have to do this, really. Thank you. But we owe him a yes, no, and quite frankly, if he doesn't have that support, then we need to get Mr. Reeves moving on this thing. We can't put him behind the 8 ball either. We do need, at that point, to get a city attorney. So we have to have a city attorney one way or the other. I'll call a city meeting for tomorrow, but Robin Aki is not here. She's a vital part of this. I know you don't want to speculate, but she was one of the people who voted against putting this RFP out. So, you know, Fox News Network can project that she might be on your side. And I want to make sure all 7 people are here and have a voice. And I also want to make sure the citizens have a chance to have their voices heard. So I'll pick any night you want. I'm pretty much available this entire month, with the exception of the time that I'm at the League of Cities convention. Other than that, I can't do anything. So.
Do I get an opportunity? August 16th works for me. It's before the whole resignation that goes into effect, and so I don't know why that would be a big concern to wait till that night. And Lynn, just real quick, if I can ask you a question, the Florida League of Cities would supply an attorney if it came down to that. Is that correct?
Knowing what Fred had submitted, I've already contacted 3 firms.
Okay.
And I have proposals from them to fill in as interim city attorneys till the RFP is done, which typically was what would happen if the attorney left before the RFP.
Frank, I'd like to move it quicker, but I think the 16th we seem to have consensus. Does anyone know if Robin Aki is available that night? Can anyone find out besides one of the council people, even though that's not a sunshine law?
Mayor,
Yes.
I can contact.
Can you?
Yeah, I don't know how quickly I will get an answer, but.
Okay,
yes.
so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to use my authority. The 16th before, we're going to have a work session the 16th at 6 o'clock? Is that, or is that one of those budget ones that's on a weird time?
No, we do the special meeting first.
Okay, so special meeting will be 6 o'clock on the
Workshop.
16th right now. Again, I want perfect attendance that night, or else we'll be right back where we are now, and we've accomplished nothing. And we'll follow it up with the work session. Okay, so that's an authorized meeting at this point. Okay, and if you find out differently, then Patty, if you will poll the council, it's not a sunshine violation to ask other council members, but I'd rather no council member have to contact another council member, okay? It's just simply, are you available or are you not for whatever day? The 16th is a good day, it looks like, okay? Mr. Riley, are you available that day?
16th?
Yes.
2 weeks from now. Yes, I am.
Okay, I'd like you to be here. A guest of honor. And the kid is still crying because you... All right, anything else, Mr. Riley?
No.
Okay, thank you. City Manager.
At the last meeting, you asked me to verify the contract cancellation for ESG. I did that in our contract. It says 7 days notice. Fred and I reviewed it, and I've already sent the letter of notice out, and actually today I got the card back that they received it. So we're good moving forward with that. The generator pricing, we're waiting on that, and we'll discuss that at the work session. And the sign ordinance. And that's other things you have the code report, and things of that nature, but that's all I have.
Okay. And I alluded to it before, we did get a letter from the Florida Department of EPA, because I know there was a lot of citizen concern about what happened out in November out at the dunes. That's not going to happen anymore. They've been very clear about what the rules are, and the city manager now has this information. I hope it will get integrated somehow into our procedure or regulations book. I don't think we need to make an ordinance out of this, but I think at least, you would have it in regulations so that if, you're out on a vacation or something, the DPW people and everybody else will know what the procedure is. And that procedure is a simple one. It can only be done in the winter months. The seedlings have to drop off the sea oats, and you can't cut them lower than 18 inches. And you have to leave, this was interesting, I learned something, you have to leave the clippings there.
That's right.
So if we're doing that to clean the junk out, that maybe isn't the best thing, because we're going to leave the junk there. So
No, you pick the junk out after
Right.
you clip it.
then you have different junk. You're going to have CO junk.
But the COs stay there because it's like a fertilizer.
So that's it, okay? There is something else, Mr. Reeves, you know what this is, and I'm not going to bring it out in public session. You and I had a meeting on this, and we were going to meet with Mr. Riley. You know what I'm talking about, right?
Our conversation on a week ago?
On the what?
On a week
Yeah,
ago.
about 2 weeks ago, right? So just keeping it on the radar, that it's something we should follow up on, okay?
I'll see when Fred's available.
No rush, but, well, September 9th, a little bit of a rush.
No, I mean,
Okay.
during the daytime.
Okay.
At least until 9 o'clock.
Yeah, it can be
Not my hours, right?
It can be, I'm up at 9. We can do a telephone call too, it doesn't matter. I mean, just to see, it's more just to decide where to begin. I mean, there was a lot of issues with that. That's a ball of wax there, and before we bring it up to the citizens, and let's see where we're at with issues on this. Okay? City clerk? Nothing. City council comments? We'll start with Frank Bankert.
Just what I spoke about earlier today about the FWC and the buoys. I guess I'll contact you, city manager, and Mr. Riley. There is no official form to put a variance together, but she says it has to comply with a statute that doesn't exist. So I'll email you tomorrow morning.
Anything else? Okay, Glenn Dunn?
No.
Nothing, Tara? Rita Swope?
Nothing.
Dave Gaddis?
No.
I have nothing else. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Ty, and we have a second, and all in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Good night, everyone. 8:22, we're off.